we got a spicy one today, guys, and I usually don't talk about these things because I like to just keep things chill. We talk about dumb gacha drama most of the time, and sometimes just gaming stuff in general, whether it's usually devs messing up, communities being a bit odd, or just things we want to talk about, games we're excited for. This one goes a little bit deeper today, but I want to talk about it because it potentially is affecting games outside of the region that it's kind of a part of. And that is the Stella Sora drama that is ongoing at the moment. I did upload a video talking about this yesterday, and a couple of comments said that my viewpoint was potentially being a little bit shallow. And I do listen to feedback, and I also kind of agree. Now, I just want to state, before we get into adding this nuance and context, none of this nuance or this context justifies really weird behaviour, threats, actual violence, doxing, and just insane toxic conversations around gender and sexist tropes, okay? And that goes both ways, right? But I just want to put that out there to start off with, because we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the nuance, the context as to why this is happening and why it seems to be quite unique to Korea in how it's happening. Now, the actual gender issues are definitely not unique to Korea. They happen all over the world, but different cultures deal with things differently, and the problems themselves come out with different symptoms, right? So, we're going to get into this. We're going to talk about the Stella Sora situation, and then we're also going to talk about the reasons for why I believe that people in South Korea are acting the way they're acting. And I just want to start off by saying, if you always see your tool as a hammer, everything becomes a nail. And I do genuinely believe this is what's happening right now. So let's take a look at the post. Let's take a look what people are angry about. And let's talk about why potentially this sort of thought process is happening in South Korea. If you disagree, or you've got any education to offer me, I'd really appreciate it in the comments down below. Let's try and add a little bit of nuance, because I think with something like this, it deserves it. The story itself deserves it, and I think it's good to look at this as something bigger than just people being weird. Though it is people being weird. Let me just reiterate that. Let's get into it. Let's look at the post and let's continue talking about it then, shall we? Let's do it. So recently, we can see this post went up for Stella Sora Korea. Hello, Demon King. We've reviewed your opinions regarding the specific motion of the upcoming character that is currently raising issues. So, if you didn't know, there's an upcoming character, and there's a bit of footage from them using their ultimate that's got people a little angry. First, we sincerely apologise for any discomfort in this scene has caused many of you Demon Kings. Now, I just got to say, it's not, the irony is not lost on me of talking about saying sorry to causing any discomfort to Demon Kings about imagery. It's just kind of funny. Like, that's not lost on me, you know. It's not a very Demon King thing to do, is it really? Getting discomfort, finding discomfort over imagery. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on from the mockery. However, we'd like to inform you that this motion, contrary to your concerns, is a scene created by an artist of foreign nationality. That's something that we'll come back to as well in a moment, which I think is important to this situation as well, and has absolutely no relation to any specific ideology. Stella Sora does not support any ideology in any way, nor does it attempt to project any specific ideology through the game. We are striving to ensure the game remains a game that many users can enjoy. In addition, we are internally discussing this matter with the development team and reviewing follow-up response plans, including the possibility of revisions. We will provide further details on specific response measures through a separate announcement at a later date. Now, this is why I want to kind of talk about this as well, right? Because things that are specific to Korea could potentially cause the games that we play and enjoy to change. Now, is it a change that's going to make much difference to us? No, but I still think it's relevant to the games that we enjoy and play, because looking at this statement, it makes me think they're probably going to change it. You might be asking, what is this all about? What do they want to change? It's this right here. So this is the upcoming character. I don't even know what the character's called, but you might look at this and go, what is he? Is it a bug? You know, what's going on here, Pix? It's that specific hand gesture right there. That has become an incredibly controversial symbol within South Korea. There is history to it. We're going to talk about it. I'm not the comprehensive guy for the history and the contemporary culture of South Korea. But people said that my viewpoint was shallow. So I wanted to potentially offer up a little bit of context because I think it's worth it. Now, I want to say this looks a little bit odd, right? But I also think it's worth looking at the point here. You can see a screw falling from this power fist that she's using. And I also want to say that as she brings her hand up and does this gesture, it almost looks like she's fearful of the power she's wielding. Right? This doesn't look like a confident girl wielding this power. She looks almost nervous that it's about to backfire in her face. Now, you might look at it and go, it does look a bit odd. But what are we talking about here? I agree. What are we talking about here? But there is actually some history to the symbol itself. And you might be asking, what is it? It's this. This was a group that came around a few years ago. And this is where it all comes from. This initially was used to mock Korean men. And you might think, wow, man, what they're doing to just say little pee-pee. Kind of goes a little bit deeper than that. And this is why I wanted to talk about the context, right? Because it is initially taking the piece out of the size of men's manhood. That's exactly why it was done. But it kind of goes a little bit beyond that, right? I don't think the anger is always about what they're saying, I got a little dick. It's more about the actual whole culture and gender division that's happening in South Korea that I had no idea about. So, let's talk about it then, shall we? So, before we actually talk about the reasons for why potentially this is a thing within South Korean culture, I just want to reference some other times that this has happened. This happened with Project Moon. This happened with Limba's company. I don't know if you guys remember when Ishmael had a costume, basically, a swimsuit costume that was designed for him. And there was a big controversy around it because a lot of men in Korea thought, this is the radical feminists getting involved with my game. And they went after Project Moon with a vengeance, thinking that it must be a radical feminist that worked on this art and will go and get them fired, basically. Now, why do they believe that? Well, because of this Megalian group that came around as a attempt to mirror the patriarchal society that Korea is. It was their attempt to troll men online for things they perceived was happening to them in terms of judging them on their appearances and the typical things that a lot of women go through across the world, right? You know, it happens to both sexes. We know some of the stuff that women do go through in regards to their appearance, and this was their way of calling it a mirroring, of fighting back in a sense where they started to troll men. I believe there was doxing. A woman was even actually arrested for posting a picture online of somebody naked, I believe, which obviously that's not a good thing to do. And that, obviously, is not a great place to be, right? You've got society coming to the point where the two genders are at each other. Is this unique to Korea? No. We all know that's not the case. But it's quite a specific, unique setup in Korea that's creating this real division. So, let's talk about that. It's a hyper-competitive society with limited opportunities for young men of recent careers. It's one of the world's most competitive education systems. It's got record youth unemployment, a precarious job market, extreme pressure to be financially successful before marriage. You must provide your future for you, your wife, and your family. But today, stable jobs are scarce, just like in a lot of places in the world. Housing is unaffordable, just like a lot of places in the world. And marriage rates are collapsing, along with birth rates as well, I do believe. So many young men feel they're failing at the role they never chose. So when feminists criticise male privilege, it emerges and causes a clash between their daily experience and what they believe they're being perceived as. It creates a defensive posture, right? So modern gender equality demands collided with older Confucian gender roles, apparently, okay? I've been learning about this recently. I've been doing a bit of Googling. Apparently some videos I should really watch as well, and I need to watch those, but they're incredibly long, but I do plan to watch those. Korea industrialized very quickly, so these traditional structures of society were attempted to be pushed aside quickly, and we all know That's not how things work. So they really persisted until very recently. Gender equality reforms have been introduced quick as well. Not gradually over decades. They've been very quick, and that is a shock to the system for some cultures and some societies as well, especially one that is very adherent to a hierarchical system that's almost like a caste class system in a society. So this is a big shock to a society as well. The older generation still operates under the male breadwinner expectations and female domestic expectation, and we all know those sort of expectations are pushed on to children as well, in a world that just is no longer the same. Older generations don't necessarily feel the pressures of the young generation in the same way because the world has changed and they are having expectations put upon them that are just not the reality of the world they live in. So younger women now are rejecting marriage, rejecting the traditional gender roles, pursuing education and careers, which is all great if that's what, it's all about. I'm one of those people, all about choices, right? And younger men feel like they're being asked to give up the privileges of the older system as they see, but still shoulder its responsibilities, particularly military service and being the breadwinning person in the household. The military service seems to be the real one that's a big part of this as well, because I think it removes a lot of agency from these young men, and they're feeling a little bit lost. They're being forced into doing things that potentially don't want to do, which might potentially put their life on hold, their career on hold, their social life on hold, their loves, potentially even their love life on hold as well. And then they're coming back into a workplace that is incredibly competitive. Jobs are scarce and they're not as secure as they used to be. Korea also has a pretty toxic work culture as well, just like Japan and China can have also. People are expected to work long hours, and the pressure is incredibly high to be successful as well. And these are the sort of things that do lead to frustration and resentment. And in a homogenous society, the other can always be easy to put the responsibility on, right? And in a society that's so homogenous, really, the only things you've got is gender, you've got age, you've got class, but gender's the two big differences. Unlike Western countries where different races, religions, and ethnic groups can all be part of the other, that can be a part of the battlegrounds for different groups. In a more homogenous country, gender tends to be the other, right? And that's where there's a major division coming as well. So men can lose up to, 21 months of their life. I think they're expected to do 2 years within the military, right? Which is a big influence on young men's lives. They earn almost no money, I believe, while doing it as well. Their peers advance in school or the career, and a lot of that is going to be women. So I think that also builds up frustration of seeing these women being able to continue on doing what they're doing in advance and not have to have this thing that holds them back like they're having to do. And that's generating frustration. And they often experience harsh hierarchy and mistreatment as well. Of a country, as I said, I didn't know any of this about Korea. So many men have come to resent that women are exempt from this military conscription, and feminists criticise the military but don't share its burden. Politicians avoid reform for fear of backlash, and I think they believe as well that there's definitely a two-tier system now. We've heard this all before. This is not unique to Korea, where politicians are catering more to more feminist ideals than they are to men. And we see this all around the world, right? This is not unique to Korea, but it's been expressed in a very unique and what we would see as an incredibly toxic way, right? But it's not unique. So, obviously, the internet has amplified hostile reactions, South Korea's online culture is extremely fast, meme-driven, highly polarized, dominated by male communities, gaming forums, media scandals about feminist symbols, like the finger-pinching symbol, as I said, has spread instantly, even when misinterpreted, manufactured, or exaggerated. As I say, I think a lot of the times, these things just haven't been there, but people who have vested interest in riling people up have been part of riling people up as well. And I think there's this overhanging trauma from this Megalia group where all this trolling happened. I think that's still a big factor in a lot of young men's minds, and I believe that these people have maybe potentially gone on to work in positions of power and have infiltrated the media they enjoy in films and TVs and gaming. But there is stuff within media where men are kind of seen as clumsy and stereotypes are put on them as well. So this then reinforces this fact right now. I'm not saying this is there, but this is how people are perceiving these things, right? So Megalia used a mirroring, which basically was what I said, this flipping the script into mocking men as a strategy. And it worked, especially in a society like Korea where respect is a major thing. Mocking somebody hits a little bit more than somewhere like in Britain, where respect is important, but we're very self-deprecating. So if somebody insults you, you're just like, all right, don't really care, and you move on. Many women supported Megalia privately, even if not involved apparently as well. The fact that it's privately, we can't say that for a fact, but looking around, I've saw that. Some extreme splinter groups like WOMAD as well escalated the rhetoric. So for many men, Megalia became proof that women secretly hate us. And in a society where people outside of where they need to interact tend to interact less, that then can create a distrust within society, right? And I think that's what's been bubbling for a while within Korea. So conservative media and political actors apparently exploit gender tensions. Now again, I'm going off stuff that I've heard from other people here. Young men feel ignored. The voters are blocked. They respond strongly to anti-feminist messaging, which we have seen that. We've seen that. You've only got to look around and see what's happening. In other countries, we see it as insane. But in Korea, they feel they have a justification for it. Now, doxing, threats, and all this sort of stuff, there's no justification for it. But they perceive they have the justification for it. Media amplifies the feminist threats, which we all know the media likes to play things up sometimes and pit people against each other. We see it all over the world, right? Politicians weaponize gender narratives. Influencers monetize outrage. Where have we heard that before? You know? Anybody in Britain and America? We know that that's a thing on both sides of the spectrum in the West as well. So obviously this deepens the sense that men see radical feminism everywhere. When we look at things and we're going, are we sure we're looking at the same thing here? But because of this surrounding culture, this deep feeling of despair, this feeling of left behind, it's a lot easier for these men to then start seeing this everywhere they look. South Korea is one of the highest measures of gender distrust as well. Low empathy between sexes, hostile perceptions of the opposite gender. As I said, they do not socialise casually outside of dating, according to Google as well. Obviously, educate me in the comment section about this. I've never been to Korea. Have different friend groups and spend most of their online time in gendered communities. And apparently, historically, men have been portrayed as targets of humour, small penis jokes, man-child husbands, clumsy boyfriend tropes and all that. And this, as you can see now, we're starting to see these layers. Now, how actually real these things are. Perception is key, right? But we're starting to see this perception of layers upon layers upon layers of things being added onto men and young men, specifically in South Korea. A lot of people don't see these as malicious, but in a culture experiencing heightened sensitivity, of course, it's going to be considered malicious. And we're already seeing it. Perfect example, what's happening right now in Stella Sora. People still are saying, well, the artist might not be Korean, but they're of Korean descent, so they're getty. You know, this assumption that they should understand, well, this is a big deal to me, so you've got to understand it as well. Where obviously us from other places, we're like, what the fuck is going on here, right? So, just to basically summarise it, we're seeing economical insecurity, feeling socially unvalued, obligated to military service and breadwinning, criticised by feminist rhetoric, ignored by politicians until recently, mocked by media tropes, traumatised by the Megalia era conflict, which again, still kind of ironic when we're traumatised as demon kings, but I'm just going to add that joke in there. You can understand why there's a hypersensitivity to perceived feminist attacks. Now, I want to say perceived feminist attacks because a lot of these are ambiguous symbols at best. So, in short, it's not that Korean men are necessarily overly sensitive in some degree. It's that they are in a pressure pot, if you will, of expectations, of a feeling of despair, a loss of agency, a culture that's rapidly changing that they necessarily don't feel a part of anymore. And sometimes that can lead people to lashing out and seeing potential problems everywhere. And as I say, in a society that's quite homogenous by Western standards, there's going to be an other that people like to apply. Well, my problems all boil down to this. And in a society that's quite homogenous, it's probably logical that maybe women are seen as the issue. Now, as I say, all of these things we spoke about then add to all of that, right? That makes this perception even stronger for a lot of young men. So expectations are high, validation is low, gender roles are in turmoil, online extremism shapes perception, fear and resentment have been politically weaponized, and the pinched finger controversy is just a symptom of a much deeper structural and emotional crisis within South Korea. So, all that being said, that's the extra nuance and context to the whole outrage over the pinched finger symbol. As I say, I still do believe these are people who are seeing ghosts. They are seeing things that are just not there. But maybe there has potentially been people who have got into positions within places and have attempted to troll and mock people. Now, I don't believe it's this widespread thing, because to me, it's kind of almost like the moon landing thing. Then you would have to have this whole industry that's designed to lie and cover up things, all in an effort to basically just mock Korean men. Now, of course, I'm not Korean. I've never been to Korea, so I don't necessarily understand that. But I do get why there are many men in Korea who are feeling a certain way. Do I agree with it? No. Do I agree with their outbursts? Of course not. Absolutely insanity. Insane for some of the things they've done. Violence, threats of violence, doxing people, saying some like incredibly abhorrent things. But this was me just trying to understand and express the potential reason why. As I say, very rarely do things just happen in a vacuum. And this is my attempt to understand the issue and the reasoning for why we're seeing this. It's not going to be the last time, because this is something that's incredibly deeply rooted within South Korean society. I've been finding out about the Korean men talk as well. Apparently, Chinese parents, Japanese parents, and parents from around the region give their daughters warnings about dating within Korea, which is a sad state of affairs as well when you think about it. These are all things I've been learning about. And again, this is me not justifying any of these things. And this is me, mocking this outrage, but I'm not mocking the actual deeper rooted societal issues within Korea. These are things that hopefully can be solved soon within the country. I think things have adjusted very quickly within Korea, and a lot of men haven't caught up with this new world they're living in, and are feeling lost and are feeling left out, and then are being forced into things like military conscription, and it leaves them feeling a lot of resentment, and their target tends to be women in society in a myriad of different reasons, and that led to women fighting back. And now you have this post-finger pinching world where men are looking for this symbol everywhere. As I say, some of the images that I have seen, from camping images to things within Chaos Zero Nightmare, they seem insane to me. But after I've learned a bit more of this, I get the idea. I disagree with it fundamentally, but I understand the situation a little bit better now. And I wanted to make this video because I thought it was worth speaking about the context and trying to understand the nuance of the situation. And I think I've learnt a lot. I am not eloquent. This is not a scripted video. This is me just going off the top of my head with some bullet points that I've got down here. And I just kind of wanted to talk about this. So if you've got any further things to enlighten me upon, I'd love to know. But all I want to say is, this is still fucking insane, right? Going out to try and bully video games because you believe that they're mocking men because of a frame in a game or a weird oddity within the art. And sometimes nowadays, man, who's not to say it's fucking AI? You know what I mean? Sometimes. Not saying that particular one was, but it's used a lot now. And what does AI struggle with? Fucking hands. So I think that's worth taking note of as well. But yeah, Koreans need to stop expecting people from other places as well if they are working on the games, whether it's China, whether it's Japan, whether it's the rest of the world, to maybe understand this. Because, as I say, one thing in the West we try and do is export our culture wars onto other people, and it's wrong. And I'd like to see that not happen as well for South Korea, because this is something specific to South Korea. The problem itself isn't. This is an issue that the whole world has had to tackle over the last 100 years, a massive change in society. Some countries have gone through it better than others. Some countries have had a bit more time to deal with it. Some countries have been rushed into this brand new world. And with the internet, you know, people are exposed to so much content now. It can overload people, and it can radicalize people also. And I think that's what we're seeing with this whole finger pinch situation. I think it's overblown. I think it's not there. But I understand the perception of why some people do believe it's there. Guys, let me know what you think down below. Bit of a different video than usual. Because I'd spoke on this, I wanted to add this context now. Won't be doing videos like this often on my channel. We're here to talk about dumb video games and gacha games, EOSing, and developers being greedy. But because this crosses over into gacha, thought it was worth talking about. Anyway, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all in the next one. Ta-ra.